right. Hello and welcome everyone to Make It Your Lettering Year. This is our open guest session with Carol DuBosch. Make an impression with hand embossing. So each month we hold a live session, and each quarter we have a community session where we share the projects we've been working on, a portfolio session where we offer ways to present your work, and a special guest session that's open to the public. Now, I want to thank all of you who paid to be in today's session. For those of you that are in Make It Your Lettering Year, you get to come to these sessions for free. And for those of you who paid over the asking price, I want to let you know that your money goes to benefit our scholarship program. Now, Carol's generosity to offer this session is not only the cornerstone to the scholarship program, it's what started the scholarship program we run here at Let's Letter Together. Just last week, a scholarship recipient sent me an email showcasing her live graphic recording that she based on some online classes that I granted her and a couple of one-to-one sessions, thanks to that scholarship program. Just to remind all of you, thank you so much for giving a little bit extra and giving to that scholarship program. So in return of all of the generosity, I would like to extend an invitation to all of you to think of someone who may benefit from taking an online lettering class at Let's Letter Together, who may be in financial need and has been forcibly marginalized. So if you can think of someone, please feel free to email me and send out, maybe ask them if they're interested in learning from me or learn from any of the pre-recorded sessions. I'll also put a link in the chat that's about the giving and receiving scholarship page. So in the follow-up email that you'll get with the recording to this session, I'll share a little bit more about the opportunities you and others can get involved in with lettering and tech hosting activities that I offer, including a special portfolio session that's going to happen next month that, even though this is what is usually just for Make It Your Lettering Year folks, is going to be free to everyone. It's featuring Clara Koo, and she's going to be sharing how to create digital products from your creative work. So be on the lookout for more information about that. So any questions before we begin? That was a bit of my commercial. Also want to share with you a few other things that we do here at here at Make It Your Lettering Year. I feel like one of those people that has 5 jobs, and which phone am I answering today? So in Make It Your Lettering Year, it is a year-long class where you get prompts every single week to be able to letter with, and then every month we have those live sessions. So in the last couple of weeks, we've gone over what types of tools, how fast can they go? We talked about drawing a container letter and filling it up. We did a blind contour exercise. This was inspired by Mikhail Summers, who taught me this technique of doing blind contour lettering. And this month as well, we like to celebrate zombie hand. And so if you want to write like a creepy, crawly zombie, you can do that. It's not only a part of the Make It Your Lettering Year class, there's also kits available, and I'll be teaching an in-person class that's actually in person in my studio here in Durango on Saturday, October 26th. Also featured is Tamer, if you know Tamer and his beautiful black lettering. Black letter lettering. He teaches a class, and that's also in the Make It Your Lettering Year portal, so you can find that as well. And just a couple of tips, just remember to attend these live sessions when you can, create a space to make your work, and make time to practice. And then keep building your lettering library. Now, here's a couple of lettering libraries. In the upper left-hand corner is one that Carol DuBosch taught me, and that is to take an old address book that's already alphabetized and write letters on those pages. And then you've got this beautiful lettering library that you can come back and refer to anytime. So without further ado, let's emboss with Carol. So this year, we have explored many ways to address the theme surface. We started with lettering on tea bags with Susie Behringer, making beautiful stitches on paper with Ilse Avix, breaking the surface with Sharon Zeugen, and now leaving a lasting impression with Carol DuBosch. Carol welcomes us at the gate of calligraphy. As a sweetheart of lettering who teaches us form, structure, and technique, Carol always invites us to look closely at what's possible. And if you have been in her in person workshops, you know she is the master of reveal. If you haven't heard me say this already, the moment Carol DuBosch put a folded pen in my hand, the trajectory of my life and career changed forever. I express I can't express enough the love and gratitude that I have for Carol and the impression she's made on my life as an artist and as a person. Now, Carol has been a calligrapher in Portland, Oregon since she was first introduced to nibs and ink in the 1960s. In the years since, she gained a degree in graphic design and studied with every major calligrapher in the US and Europe. Carol taught college level and private classes in the Northwest for 30 years, along with workshops throughout the US and in Italy. Carol has directed 3 international calligraphy conferences in Portland. Now, I'm honored to have Carol with us today and excited about how we are presenting this session. So that you have a complete, succinct hand lettering presentation, we're going to share a recording and we encourage you to ask your questions in the chat. So you'll want to either have your embossing tool in hand or sit back and enjoy the session. The recording will be shared within 48 hours, and those who have paid for the session will have 90-day access. Those who are part of Make It Your Lettering Year will have lifetime access to this session and all past guest sessions that are part of that course.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or wherever we are. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and it is morning. I'm so excited to share embossing with you today, and I love to share and explain it and teach others hand embossing. I am a lifelong calligrapher. I began my career in 1968, and that's a very long time ago. I'm much better with letters than numbers, so I don't even want to do the math of how long I've been doing this. And I find that blind embossing is a terrific way to add another element to your page of writing. It seems to get along with lettering well, very well, because it's kind of a background thing. It's not um, overly competing with the writing. There's no color to it. You're just changing the shape of the paper. And it's a very, very exciting thing. And it's also very, very simple. I think you'll be surprised how simple it is. And it requires no special tools. It's likely you have everything you would need right there in your studio already. Okay, this is a preview. After we look at a little bit of a few examples, I will we'll go to my desk and I will show you how it works. Here's an example that combines the hand embossing with my calligraphy. Taking images of hand embossing is tricky because the lighting has to come from the side, and it isn't always the best lighting for the page of writing, but it hits the texture of the hand embossing nicely. This is a goofy page. It says, in the right light, at the right time, everything is extraordinary. It's a quote that I like very much, and I used an alphabet I designed called Jubilee scripts. And it's meant to slow down the reader and maybe let you think about things a little more. Here's an Asian symbol for water and my calligraphy combined. You do the writing first and then the embossing because you don't want to write over all those bumps. This is an example of I made a spiral that I can then add my writing to, and it just gives the page a little more interest. Again, the dragonfly came after the calligraphy. You're able to place it after the writing and also not worry about the bumps. And this one also, the embossing was done last. Here's the stencil that I used for the mountains and an example of using it. I can overlap and repeat it. It's a delightful image to work with. These are the simple tools you need. I make my stencils out of manila file folders or something of similar weight. File folders are strong, and when I'm going to spend time cutting a stencil, I'd like it to last a long time. So file folder is a good material. You'll need a little bit of tracing paper, a sharp X-Acto knife, an embossing stylus that could also be a crochet hook or an empty ballpoint pen. You want something with a roundy, pointy end on it. Little drafting tape and a glue stick. So I think you'd agree that that is a very simple supply list for us. So here are those simple tools we looked at. The embossing stylus might be the one tool you don't have, and it's a nice tool. I'm also very fond of this. My friend Julie Gray took a Bic pen and emptied out all the ink and made this great embossing tool, so it works well. Recycling. It's nice to have a bone folder, and I'll show you why in a minute. Glue stick, drafting tape, tracing paper, and file folder. So I'm going to share this. Is a simple, small stencil of a small bird. And we're going to emboss that on this paper. This is Canson. It's kind of cardstock weight, and it's a favorite paper for embossing. I'm going to slide my light pad over here and turn it on. I like to tape everything in place so there isn't anything shifting around while I'm working. And I'll take my little piece of paper and fold it in half. And I would like the dove to be embossed here on the front. So I take that and line that up against the stencil and decide, where do I want it? I think I'd like it centered, sort of. So rather than just hold it there, it's a good idea, again, to tape everything in place. So I'm ready to emboss now. And I don't know what this does, but it helps. You rub your finger over the area. It either puts a little skin oil on the paper or it warms it. I don't know, but it always helps. Now I'm going to press hard along the edges. The nice thing is the file folder isn't so thick that I would press and poke a hole. It's the right thickness for just getting that nice clean shape. So I'm running this tool around the edge. Hard. I'm pressing very hard. I want a good image. So I've just gone around all of the edges, and now I'm going to just take my bone folder and press along the insides. This makes it a more raised image. Okay, we need the reveal here. Lighting from the side. So you can see that that's the inside, and here is the front. Looks pretty wonderful. And it was very fast and fun and simple. Okay, good. So that is a simple shape that embossed beautifully. Next up, we're going to talk about a more complex image. So I have a heart here, and I'm going to emboss it. Tape it down. Got my paper. Tape it down. And it's good to be reminded of all of these steps. Oops. I'm just going to go around the edge on this one. I am going around twice. And let's take a look. It's pretty good. Oops. Yep, a nice heart shape. What if I wanted that not to be a solid heart, but I wanted it to be a heart-shaped line? That is an easy thing to do. So I have the stencil and I have the heart that came out of it. What I do then is just take scissors and trim a bit of that heart away. Just making this inside heart smaller. And I'm going to set it in there, and I will have a stencil that makes a heart-shaped line. Rather than have to wait for all the glue to dry, I've made one. So this is a fully made stencil. It has tracing paper, and then this is stuck to the tracing paper so that, oops, there's tracing paper holding that center heart where I want it, holding it in place. So now if I emboss this stencil, I will have an entirely different heart. It will be a line. And this is a concept that we will explore further with lettering and more complex designs, using the tracing paper to hold portions of your stencil in place. And here is the line art. Okay, so that's how that happened. And next is an ABC XYZ stencil that I made. And you can see that it has tracing paper to hold the bits that would have otherwise fallen away. They're just being held in place where they need to be. And this embossing works beautifully. One trick that I learned the hard way is these small pieces, when they're cut out, are sitting on your desk, and pretty soon they all start looking alike. And yet you have to get them back exactly where they belong. So before I cut out a counter shape, I mark it with a little X on the upper area of it so that I will know which side is correct and which direction is correct when it's time to glue them back together. It can be a puzzle that you don't necessarily win if you don't do that. Okay? We looked at the gratitude piece on the slideshow, and here is the original and the stencil that made it, and what came out. The word gratitude came out in one piece from the stencil. I did not cut this stencil. I let my digital cutter named Cricut cut this stencil from my design. I have hands that are getting old and they have difficulty holding the X-Acto knife. So I'm very happy to let Cricut do the cutting for me. And it's been a great boon to my hand embossing. So the back of this looks as you would imagine. This paper is Reeves BFK. It's a wonderful paper for hand embossing. Next up, I have a longer PowerPoint that's going to show many, many examples, but we've looked at the basic, how to do it, how to make it a little more complex. And as we go through what I'm going to show on the PowerPoint, we can reference the things that we have learned and just taken a look at. Here's a simple dove taken very close up that didn't require any tracing paper because nothing is a closed shape. It's an open line. On the top of the image here is my pen drawing to make this dove, and then the stencil. So when something doesn't have closed shapes, it can go without the tracing paper. And here is that dove again. And again. And another small dove with a little bit of detail added. This was during the pandemic. We all learned that we had to spend 20 seconds washing our hands. This is my hand with a stencil. Obviously, I did the writing first and then came along and embossed the page. That's a good, something good to remember. Here again is a very simple leaf that is a line, and I have it going both ways. Here's the stencil, and I flipped it so that I could get the image going in two directions. And just a background image of a swirling. I use this swirl for a lot of different things. It becomes pretty handy using portions of it. It also exists without the tracing paper. It holds itself together just fine. Nothing is closed. This rose shouldn't need the tracing paper, but it's there because those thin lines wobble a little bit. So I've just glued them to tracing paper to support them. Had to do a pen and a pencil as a calligrapher, of course. And here are these stencils. The pencil has tracing paper to support those long, skinny parts. It's entirely possible to emboss on dark paper. It isn't easy, but it's entirely possible. Here's that dragonfly again. And the dragonfly stencil is two parts. When you cut out a dragonfly, you get a piece of manila file folder that looks like a dragonfly. And I maintained it and added the details to that portion. So it's a two-stage embossing. I bring the paper and first emboss the shape and then move it over, make sure it's all registered well, and then emboss the details. So shape first and then details. It's a two-stage. So the embossing, the paper is brought up 2 levels, if you can imagine. And that's how these ginkgo leaves work. Again, this is one stencil, it's one design flipped. And here it is with more of a front light. Yeah, so I emboss the shape and then move over to catch the details. Here's a globe that is also a two-stage embossing. First a circle and then details. This is a book I made called Advice from a Tree, and every page of the book has a simple tree form, and all of the trees are made from these modules. And we'll go through the pages and you'll see that they're just used very, very simply. So the module designs on this page are the same as these. I love the difference. There's a lot that can be done with a line. Here's a 2-level star, and it could be unlimited probably. I just used 2 stencils. And a multi-level heart. You just start with a big one, and the second, third, fourth, just go right through. So I enjoy working with lettering and alphabets and embossing. So that's this portion of the PowerPoint. We have looked at this. And this stencil and there's another flip. The word art, right side up and upside down. And there's the stencil. This is a recent embossing stencil that the Cricut machine cut for me. This is my writing, and Cricut was able to take this black and white image and create the stencil. And I'm so impressed with the technology that the rough edges of my writing, which I like, were not lost in the translation of the stencil. So on the left is my design for an ampersand using a scroll pen, and on the right is the stencil. And I've used this a variety of ways. It's quite enjoyable to work with. Just the word wild with kind of an extra part of the W because it's the word wild. And this required no tracing paper. It's a very simple line stencil and nothing closed. I kept the D open so that it could stand on its own. This is a very, very, very early piece of mine, and it's the first time I cut my own lettering into a stencil. I was quite amazed by all of this. And the tracing paper is holding the centers of the O, the P, and the loop on the E. It just seemed cozy to turn cozy upside down and make them all close together for this page. And those were Neuland letters, and here's my Neuland alphabet partially cut out. As yet, I have never needed to write anything that had an F, a Q, a K, or a U. So I haven't cut them out yet. Someday I'll need them, and they're there ready to go. I just haven't needed them. And you can see the counter shapes on the left with their little arrows. As I explained, it's so helpful because those little bits look like nothing on your desk, and they're very important when you glue them back in. Here I've used letters and some lines for the writing. Having an alphabet is very handy. This is my writing, and I decided to make a stencil of my letters. And this was a long time ago, 1986. I'm still using it, and it's still in very, very good shape. The whole file folder tracing paper pair up is very good. It lasts. The stencil for the spiral was also cut by Cricut. And in the photo, I included what I pulled out. And here I'm gluing it to the tracing paper because it would wobble a lot, and I wanted to stabilize it. I used a Valentine-shaped spiral here. And I teach workshops online and record them, and they are available on my website if you're interested in knowing a lot more about embossing or any of the things that I teach. Thank you for your attention and for this chance to share something I love to do.
Looks like Lisa's asking, are there two-stage embossing stencils like the ginkgo leaf details also mounted on the trace paper?
If they need to be, the tracing paper just holds things that might fall away or wobble. So I can pull out a two-stage embossing stencil if that would be helpful.
Yes, I was wondering what is difficult about doing a stencil on black paper
Embossing black paper, you don't have the
or embossing.
you don't have the luxury of the light shining through the paper, showing you where to place your stylus and where the stencil is and where the hole is. You don't have that luxury. So you're kind of feeling your way. And what I do is I put the dark paper over the stencil, tape everything in place just like I showed, and then I rub it on the back with a bone folder, and it sort of makes the edges of the shape shiny, and then you kind of feel your way into it. It isn't easy, but it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And a quick note on using a bold folder on black paper. If you use a Teflon folder, sometimes it won't do that shiny bit or the marring.
Yeah, so you don't use a Teflon folder.
Don't? Oh, I thought you should use a Teflon
No,
folder on black.
for that, you want the shine. You're using the
Oh,
folder to shine up the space on the back so you know
ah,
where that image is.
gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you. And Nan, you look like you have your,
Thank you.
um, yeah.
First of all, thank you. Your work is stunning. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And second, in the gratitude to Mother Earth, when you did that, the lettering, the colors blend one thing into another. I was wondering how you did the color blending in the calligraphy.
Well, it's nice that you asked because I have that set up on my desk right now. And I'm thrilled that someone wants to look at it. So without featuring the embossing, you can see the color blending now. It is Bister inks, color blended, and you can see the embossing with the side lighting. Does that answer your
How
question?
did you get the one color to another?
How do you do it?
Yeah.
Carefully.
You loaded each different letter on your pen with different color?
Not each letter, but every couple letters I'll dip into a different color.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Gorgeous,
And I'll,
beautiful. Your work is gorgeous.
yeah. And so, Carol, you teach how to blend Bister inks in some of your classes, right? And you also use the
Yes,
calligraphy inks, Winsor and Newton, right?
Winsor Newton inks, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so Lisa, I have the ginkgo leaf available. Here it is. There's no tracing paper at all because nothing fell out. I mean, this is the leaf that came from here when I cut it, and instead of throwing it away, I cut the details on it. Is that an okay answer?
Yeah, that's great to see. Thank you, Carol. Just one quick question. When you line up the leaf shape now with what you first embossed the outline, do you keep it inside the cutout or you just keep them totally separate? I don't know if my question's very clear.
Well, when I set up to emboss this, I'll tape everything to the light source. I'll do the shape,
Mm-hmm.
emboss it, and then move over here, line it up, and punch out the details.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Carol,
I
this is
wanted to ask about using embossing when you're making a book. You often put the book under a weight to get things to flatten out. Does that damage the embossing, or how would you handle that? Any recommendations? I love the tree book.
Oh, the tree book. Yeah, the tree book is wonderful. I did that as a single one-off book, and I also made 12 of them for a book exchange. So I was heavily involved in the tree book. I don't worry about pressing books and fine book binding. I don't make fine binding books. I make experimental artist books, and if they have embossing in them, I haven't noticed that it flattens, if that helps.
Thank you.
Great.
Carol, this is Jenny. Hi. I wondered, when you're using that tracing paper on your stencil, how do you keep from tearing that paper?
You're not tearing it because the tracing paper is up against the light source
Okay,
or the window or whatever your light source is. You're not punching through it.
okay,
You put the tracing paper on the wrong side.
okay. Great.
Anyway, yeah.
Thanks.
It's like
Ellie
we
had a question about cricket.
Yeah, let's save the cricket questions till very last if we can,
Okay.
because we know what a big what a big question that is.
Okay.
And it looks like Carol Hawley, you have another question?
Yes, can you talk a little bit about your gluing process of
Sure.
gluing the tracing paper onto the stencil?
I use a glue stick generally, although in the PowerPoint, I showed my spiral and it looked to me like I use wet glue, maybe Elmer's or something. Normally I will use just a glue stick and just put enough on there to hold it.
So you don't need to go over all of it
No,
necessarily. So
no,
I get it. Mhm.
no.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of stay away from the edges because then it gets a little messy.
And
Great.
if it's an open design that's fairly simple, do you always need a backing paper? Do you always need the tracing paper?
You only need the tracing paper to hold counter shapes.
Yeah. Okay. And to make sure it doesn't move around. Yeah.
Or
Things don't
if
move around.
it's a wobbly sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
It becomes very, very evident when, you can't read the word because the middle of the O is sitting on your desk. It's,
Right.
oh, I think I need to position that with some tracing paper.
Exactly. All right. Any other questions from folks? I think we gathered everything in the chat with the exception of cricket. If not, please unmute. Lynn, you have a question.
Yes, I'd like to know what papers are the easiest to use with this technique. I know you said Reeves, you said Canson. What kind of Canson?
I said Canson me TNTs. That is the that's a Canson paper. You can find it at any art store. It's fabulous. And it's a nice weight, it's textured, it embosses beautifully. And it comes in 50 plus colors, which is nice.
Thank you.
And Reeves BFK is a soft artist printmaking paper, and it's wonderful. But you become an expert when you try every paper in your studio. Then you know this works, this doesn't. I like this, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And the
Excellent.
Reeves and the Canson both take ink well, so that you can combine the two.
And you'll find that out too, because it's all an experiment. what kind of ink, what kind of pen, what's the weather, what's your mood, what is the phase of the moon. I can't guarantee anything.
Right.
You try everything. Trials.
I
It's the
love that you
only way it works.
Yeah, I love that that question was asked in the chat, and it does take some. We all know that the Trinity, right? It's the pen, the ink, and the paper, and so you'd have to do some testing. Don't just think you're going to create a masterpiece the first time out. Test that ink on that paper. Test that
And then
embossing on that paper.
you become an expert. You become your own source of expert. You're the
Right.
one, you know.
Yeah, we know that pilot parallel pen inks are just going to bleed on anything, so don't use that. And
Throw
we
the
know that.
cartridges away. Yeah,
Right, exactly. And we know that gouache is probably going to sit on top of just about anything.
right.
So that might work, right? So yeah, so thinking about your favorite tools and your favorite inks and your favorite papers, how can they all come together?
Mhm.
Great questions. Any more questions?
I have one. When you cut them by hand, do you prefer like the round knives or the strong ones, like the sharp?
I like the triangular blade, the number 11 regular X-Acto knife blade.
Thank you.
The one I showed in the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Number 11. I think it's a number 11.
Great question. And Rhonda, did you have a question?
Yes, Carol, I have a question about light tables. Size, the size of the light table, is there something inexpensive that one can just use just for this purpose?
Oh my gosh, yes. Right now, the world has opened up and we can now get light tables for like $15, light pads on Amazon. And do you have a link for one, Heather? Or
I'll put one in the chat. Yeah.
okay. I have one sitting on my desk here. I'll try to show it to you.
And remember, the good old-fashioned window is
Yeah.
right in your room.
Oh, I have
Yeah.
this one, and it's absolutely fabulous. It's thin, sits on the desk, works. It's fabulous. Small, lightweight. And then there is the window. Don't forget the window, always.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a lot of great light tables out there. Lisa's asking, would it be convenient to show your mountains example again? I'm really glad you asked that, Lisa, because it's one of my very, very favorites.
I'll do my best to find it, Lisa.
And if not, I might be able to find it on the video and do a quick
Okay.
share. Yep,
I'll
I've
wait
got it.
patiently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One moment, please.
Yeah. So the way I keep my embossing stencils, I keep them in plastic protective sheets in three ring binders, and there's a certain amount of order, and but not a tremendous amount. So it's not happening right now, Lisa.
It's okay. I've got it right here.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and I think I show the stencil also.
Yes, I think you show it right after.
Here's the stencil that I used.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes,
so-
and I was wondering, you talked about moving and replacing it, and I wasn't sure if you'd done that in the final piece.
I did.
Okay, I see it now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you could use it in many different ways.
Yeah, that's
Overlapping
awesome.
it and yeah.
And
And
I
is
just want to
that-
point. Go ahead.
Is
You
that
might-
Bister ink for the writing part?
It's yes, it is. It's not the ink, it's the crystals.
Yes.
I shook some of the Mr. Ink crystals onto the page and wrote with water.
Wow.
Very
so you're
snaggy.
shaking.
What?
Yes. So are you writing with water first
No.
and then shaking the crystals? You're putting the crystals on first,
No.
then writing.
I put the crystals on the paper. I have a little teeny plastic container where I've put red, blue, and yellow bister, those three primary colors, the powder, the crystals. in the little plastic container, and then I put holes in the top of the container like a salt shaker. Okay, a little shaker container. So I can shake blistered ink dust on the page, not a lot, because you don't need a lot, and then write on the page with water, and the ink crystals bloom. It's amazing.
Yeah. And
And
your technique of doing this is much more controlled than if you were to do it the other way, where you write in water and then you sprinkle, because then you get blobs and water doesn't always go where you want it. Like,
yeah, I think
it's just
that's
different.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole trick is to let everything dry really good. You're
Yes.
dying to blow it off. You're dying to see how cool it looks, but you can't until everything is dry.
Take a nap.
Yeah, take a nap. Exactly. This piece took all day to make because I had to do all that and then let it dry and then come back and emboss it. Yeah. But
Excellent.
yes.
Any other questions about this piece?
It's stunning, Carol. Can I see the cutout one more time, or the
Sure.
stencil? Thank you.
Just a line.
It's really great.
I did let Cricut cut this stencil because my Cricut machine was new at the time. And I thought, okay, Cricut, can you cut a line and keep it the same width all the directions that I'm making it? Because I know I would have trouble cutting it and keeping that width consistent throughout. But Cricut did a fine job.
And notice that this area right here, do you see my, I don't know if you can see my cursor.
We can.
Okay, so the area of where the lines start to get really close together, this is where you could easily tear your piece if you weren't writing with a Cricut. It would be really hard to get that close and
Yeah,
still have that, maintain that level of control. So
yeah.
more complicated things would be great for the Cricut. So should we answer some quick Cricut questions now?
I can answer a few, but I'm not an expert at all.
All right. So it looks like we did have a question from Ellie. And someone also wanted to know which Cricut do you have? That's the first question. And then, yeah,
I have Cricut Explore 3.
Cricut Explorer 3.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And you'll have to go online to see how much they cost. I can put a link in the chat. But what other questions do you have, Ellie?
I don't even know how to set it up, what software to use. I'm trying to go from my handwriting and having it cut out.
Okay.
And you have a Cricut?
I have a Cricut Maker, and I think that's one of the newer ones.
That's the one I used to have. Yep.
Okay. And do you have the software installed on your computer and it's all working?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. So I don't know how, do I just take an image of my writing and then ask it to cut it out? Is that pretty much how it works?
You need to do a very clear black and white image. And I think the Cricut likes PNG files.
PNG, okay.
Now,
PNG.
it depends on which software you use. So
Oh,
it can
okay.
take a couple of different files.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Do you want me to come on screen with you, Carol?
sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is a big question. And the reason why I say that is because I have a very different workflow than Carol does. She's using Photoshop Elements, and so she's saving PNG files. I'm using Adobe Illustrator, so I'm saving SVG files. And the fastest way that I have found to take your anything that you wrote by hand and get it onto a Cricut is to use your phone using Adobe Capture. And I'm happy to share. It's like a 50 steps though, but you go through those steps and it will cut. And so, but there are many different ways. And Cricut offers lots of different online videos and how-tos that you can take, and free classes. So you can take free classes from their website. It's quite a learning curve technically if you're not technically savvy, one of my biggest pieces of advice that I give to people before they even buy a Cricut, or if you haven't used it yet, is to write down all of your ideas before you even start to learn the technical process. Write down what you want your finished projects to be. What are your ideas for it? What do you want to create with it? Because something magically happens a few weeks after you get it and start using it. All of a sudden, you become creatively dumb and you forget everything that you wanted to do. And then all of a sudden you have this machine that you don't know how to work with. And so Carol and I were part of a Cricut support group for a little while. There were five of us, I think, and we worked it through. And what was a big takeaway that you had, Carol? I know what it is, but if you don't, so in case you don't remember, but
Takeaway. No, you tell me, because I forgot.
it's just a tool.
That's right. It's just
It
a
is not going to make you more creative. It's not
Yeah.
going to make you masterpieces. You
Right.
are the beautiful mind behind it. Crickets are just a tool.
Another tool in the studio. Yeah.
That's right.
I have another question. When I want to write in a spiral and I would like to incorporate the embossing lines on it, I'm going to write first. Now, as my guideline, as I'm writing the spiral, do I draw a pencil line to emulate where the embossed piece is going to go on top of it?
I'm going to stop you there, Ellie, and say that that spiral embossing stencil I made, when I want to use the stencil with writing, I emboss the stencil first and write inside the space.
Okay.
That's the only time I emboss first and then write.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah.
Carol, hi.
Yeah.
You sometimes do embossing and debossing. You combine them, and how do you do that? Do you have something to show us?
No, I don't. I have not done that where you go up and in. I haven't, that hasn't entered my need to do.
Okay.
I emboss and then emboss higher, but I haven't done it where I emboss and then go down. But you can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
With some simple images, it might, as long as it's not letters, it might just be flipping it, right? Or flipping the paper and doing it the other way. It's a bit of a puzzle, but.
You mean debossing?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done debossing. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carol, I noticed you basically just are there white embossing. Do you ever try and color your embossing with, I don't know, colored pencils or watercolor or anything like that? Have you ever done that?
What I have found is that once you color the embossed area, it all the magic is gone.
Yeah, okay.
Basically.
Yeah.
I think the magic is in the subtlety of it and the way the light plays, and the light doesn't play once there's color.
Okay.
You might be thinking that embossing is a little too difficult to see. It is, but that's part of its magic. And I don't try to make it more visible by adding color. I just haven't found it works.
I bought one of your pieces. I bought one of your pieces years ago, Carol, and you emboss the whole letters and you emboss the whole alphabet, which was absolutely beautiful in a black frame. And I know what you're talking about. It just looks beautiful.
And this is blind embossing, right? So it's impressions, whereas there's a type of embossing where it stands on top of the paper that is used with, inks that expand.
You're talking about embossing powder?
Yeah, embossing powder. Yeah.
Thermography, yeah.
Yeah, so slightly different. Yeah, and then Veronique is asking,
and Veronique, no, I don't add shadows with pencil or graph. I just let the light do what light does.
Yeah, but you certainly could if you wanted.
Well, yeah, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, that's right.
I just know what works for me.
Heather?
Yes, Bart, you're
got
up.
my microphone back.
All right.
Yeah, do you have a link for the Cricuts?
Yeah, I can put this in. So you can purchase the Cricuts all different places. I just did a quick search for the Cricut, and Carol, you said you have the Cricut Explorer 3.
Correct.
Yeah. And so I just did a quick search. You can find there's different prices there, anywhere from $175 up to $300, depending on what kind of a kit you get. Sometimes they come with all kinds of things. There's all kind. It does more than cutting. It does embossing. It does gold foil, things like that. Now I had the Cricut Maker, and that was, I don't know what the differences are there. You could probably go to Cricut's site and compare them. You can also purchase them uh, from Cricut directly. And if you go to, and I'm not totally advising this, but if you're like, I don't want to spend that much money, you certainly don't have to. That's a really big link. Sorry for that. But you can go on to Facebook Marketplace. And I noticed the reason why I know this is because I went onto Facebook Marketplace to post my Cricut because I sold it. And when I went there, there were 6 other Cricuts. So if you wanted to pay a lot less, you could go into Facebook Marketplace, risk your life, and try to find a Cricut that way. I don't know what kind of condition it would be in, that type of thing, but honestly, I did never have any problem with mine, and Carol knows that I tried to break mine. I tried to put things through it like cardboard
That
and
was it. Break the
all
Cricut.
kinds. I was like, that was my thing. I want to try to break this Cricut, and I never broke it. It was invincible. And I put a lot through it. I put a lot of really thin cardboard, like cracker boxes are made out of. I was doing a lot of things that were thick like that. And there are certain blades you need for that, a deep cutting blade. And the deep cutting blade will also cut thin sheets of metal and thin sheets of wood. So there's some fun things there too.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions about embossing for Carol? Oh, beautiful.
You all give it a try.
Veronique just made something and put it in the chat. I will see if I can't share that on screen just so that we can see this. And I have to
Oh,
ask you, Veronique, what paper were you using here?
A paper like craft paper.
Uh-huh. Yep. So she's in
nice.
France. Yeah. I hope it's okay that I shared. I just realized that you shared this privately. I'm so sorry. Anything you'd like to say about this, Veronique?
No, it's just I find it easy to just cut the letters in aquapad, very strong paper, 100 gram. I cut them with scissors.
Okay.
And that's all.
And that's all. Wow, that's great. Excellent.
It's kind of funny.
And I can see that you have a little bit of an overlap here between the A and the M, and you can do some fun things with that as well. And something that I noticed, Carol, that you did when you were doing your embossing is you're just going around the outside, or sometimes you fill in?
Sometimes, depends. You get a more rounded raised image if you fill in the whole area. Those are things that you should trial.
Right, because it depends on the pressure, the tool, and the paper. Yeah.
And someone asked in the chat, does hot press watercolor work? It depends on how thick it is, how hard you want to press, how small the lines are. But the answer is yes and no.
Right. Yeah. So testing. And if you're anything like me, I like to be able to create a whole book full of samples where I'm testing things and then keeping really copious notes, because chances are, I mean, unless you get on a big embossing kick where you do it every day for the rest of your life, you might need to make some notes and refer back to those.
And that makes you the expert, Heather. You've got the book.
Right. Yeah. And I have to say, when I do share these with people in person, they look at it and go, oh, you should have this reprinted. And it's like, that's impossible. This is watercolor. I mean, I could, but nobody really wants to see that.
Personal notes. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Very valuable.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you'll join us next month for the session with Clara Koo, where she's from Conquering the Digital Empire, where she's going to help us create digital products from our artwork. If you can't imagine what that is, just check out the poll that I'll be sending after the session. And Carol, if we want to keep learning from you, I did put the link in the chat, but do you have anything that's coming up? What's coming up for you?
I do. I'm going to be giving a talk for the Washington, D.C. Calligraphers Guild on November 6th. And you can go to the Calligraphers Guild website and see that I'm going to be talking about holiday cards. And so that's coming up.
Excellent. And lots of classes on demand that you can watch from Carol on her website.
Yes.
And Denise is asking, do you share some of your alphabets? Absolutely. This is what I meant by she is the gateway to calligraphy. It's not just technique. Yeah.
Look on my website. There are all kinds of Zoom workshops available.
Yep. Specializing especially in, well, let's just name them off. We've got italic and bone script, bin Sean letters, monkey bar caps is super fun. Gothicized italic, Neuland hand, folded pen. Yeah, I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. Unchel, Jubilee. Yeah. Excellent teacher. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. And stay tuned because Carol and I have some more things coming up in the coming months and year.
Yeah.
All right. See you next time, everyone.